Today we are continuing our series on heroes of the faith, talking about the people recorded in the Hall of Faith of Hebrews 11. And today we're going to be talking about Samuel. Now, the title for our message is God the Hero Who Gives Free Choice and Loves and Forgives Even When Bad Choices Are Made. Have you ever wished that you could take someone's ability to make their own choices away? Maybe as when you had a kid when they were a 2-year-old and they were crazy. They're making all these crazy decisions. You're like, okay, I'm now going to take away your right to make any choice you want. Because they keep on making crazy choices. Well, that's probably thoughts that God was going through his mind in this story today. So we're going to see how God is the hero in this way, and we're also going to see how Samuel displays great faith. So turn with me, excuse me. Excuse me. Family's got the crud going around. 1 Samuel chapter 7. 1 Samuel chapter 7. And while you're turning there, let me give you some background information here. So, last week we talked about Samson. He was a judge, and he was trying to get the Philistines out of Israel. Well, he's died, and now there's no judge to help Israel. Well, we're introduced at the beginning of 1 Samuel. I'm not going to read it because of time. But we're introduced to Samuel's mother, and she's evidently a devout woman of faith. But she's barren and she can't have a child. So she comes before God and asks him, God, I pray that you would bless me with a child. Here's a painting of that. She comes before God, asks God, please bless me with a child. And if you bless me with a child, I will dedicate him to your ministry. Well, God answers her request and he gives her Samuel. When Samuel is old enough, she takes him to be in the care of Eli, the high priest, and dedicates Samuel to full-time service for God. So she does her part. Well, as Samuel grows up, at one point, God comes and talks to Samuel when he's a young boy. And he tells Samuel that I want you to be the next judge of Israel. And Samuel says, right away, he says, speak, God, I am listening. I am your servant. Now, one thing we're going to do in the message today, we're going to compare Samuel to Samson and Gideon. Now, for both of them, for Gideon, it took a long time for him to get to the point of being okay with being God's servant. And then Samson basically never got to that point. But Samuel, right at the beginning of his life, said, yes, God, I will do what you want me to do. Well, the context of what's happening specifically here in chapter 7 is that Israel has been invaded by the Philistines. Israel has gone and served other gods. They've been invaded. So Israel turns to God and says, we need your help. So God sends Samuel, the next judge, to tell them this. So look at verse 3 of chapter 7. It says, and Samuel spake unto all the house of Israel, saying, if ye do return unto the Lord with all your hearts, and put away the strange gods of Ashtaroth from among you, and prepare your hearts unto the Lord, and serve him only, and he will deliver you out of the hand of the Philistines. Then the children of Israel did put away Balaam and Ashtaroth, and served the Lord only. So Samuel comes to the children of Israel, and he says, if you put away these gods, if you start serving God again, he will help you. So the children of Israel listen to Samuel. They say, okay, we'll do that. They put away their gods. And then Samuel tells them this. Look at verse 5. It says, and Samuel said, gather all Israel to Mizpah, and I will pray for you unto the Lord. And they gathered together to Mizpah, and drew water, and poured out before the Lord, and fasted on that day, and said there, we have sinned against the Lord. And Samuel judged the children of Israel in Mizpah. So after Israel says, okay, we will do what needs to be done, Samuel says, okay, I want you to go to Mizpah. I want all of you to go to Mizpah and pray to God. And so Israel does that, and it's interesting to note here that Samuel is going to put a big emphasis on prayer, showing that he can't do this of himself. Remember, Samson was like, I've got this. I can do it all myself. Samuel's saying, no, we need God's help, so let's pray. So they prayed, and when they did that, they admitted to God that they had sinned, and God forgives them. Now we're going to see what the Philistines do with the Israelites. Look at verse 7. It says, when the Philistines heard that the children of Israel were gathered together to Mizpah, the lords of the Philistines went up against Israel, and when the children of Israel heard it, they were afraid of the Philistines. We'll stop there. So what happens is the Philistines, they hear that all the Israelites are gathering in Mizpah, and they say, you know what, we're going to attack the Israelites here. Now we don't know exactly why they did this, but let me ask you this. How many of you have ever tried to get rid of, I'd say groundhogs, prairie dogs? Those things are smart, right? When we lived in Denver area, we lived next to an open field where there's a bunch of prairie dogs, and they are smart. You can't sneak up on them. You know, you go up to one, and they start making the noise, and they go down, and another one comes up and starts making the noise. They're hard to get rid of. But let's say that all of them came out into the open all in one spot. You'd be like, let's get them, right? They're all there. They're ready to be taken. Let's do it. Well, that's probably what the Philistines are thinking. All of Israel is gathered in one spot. Philistines are more powerful. They don't have to go and try to run after all the Israelites now. So they say, okay, let's take all our army, let's attack the Israelites. So what did the children of Israel do in response? Look at verse 8. It says, and the children of Israel said to Samuel, cease not to cry unto the Lord our God for us, and he will save us out of the hand of the Philistines. And Samuel took a sucking lamb, and offered it for a burnt offering wholly unto the Lord. And Samuel cried unto the Lord for Israel, and the Lord heard him. So the children of Israel, they start freaking out. They say, Samuel, go pray to God. He has to save us. We can't do this. So Samuel prays to God and does an offering. Now notice, once again, Samuel, he doesn't go do some push-ups. He doesn't go arm himself. No, he says, you know what? I'm going to go pray that God would do this. So he prays. So how does God answer? Look at verse 10. It says, and as Samuel was offering up the burnt offering, the Philistines drew near to the battle against Israel. For the Lord thundered with a great thunder on that day upon the Philistines, and discomfited them, and they were smitten before Israel. And the men of Israel went out of Mizpah and pursued the Philistines and smote them until they came to Bethkar. Then Samuel took a stone and set it between Mizpah and Shen, and called the name of it Ebenezer, saying, hitherto hath the Lord helped us. The Philistines were subdued, and they came no more unto the coast of Israel. And the hand of the Lord was against the Philistines all the days of Samuel. And the cities which the Philistines had taken from Israel were restored to Israel, from Ekron even unto Gath. And the coast thereof did Israel deliver out of the hands of the Philistines. And there is peace between Israel and the Amorites. So what happens here is, as the Philistine army approaches, God sends a crazy storm of thunder and lightning and wipes out most of the army, to the point that Israel's little army was able to overcome the rest of the Canaanite army. Now, let me ask you this. If you had a choice, so we talked about last week with Samson, who had superhuman strength and defeated thousands of Philistines all by himself. Would you rather have one elite soldier like Samson to defeat the Philistine army, which is great, you'll take that, right? Or have a lightning storm come in and kill almost all the Philistines? I mean, it's kind of like if you had the choice between, if you had an elite Navy SEAL, that someone extremely experienced, yeah, you'll take that, that's great. But if you had the choice between that and a storm that wipes out the whole army, you take the storm, right? So Samuel, in his humility, he prays before God, and God sends the storm and wipes out the Philistines. Now, it's also interesting to note here that it says that not only do they win the victory at this battle here, but then they take back all of the land that the Philistines had taken over. Because even though Samson had helped whittle down the numbers of the Philistines, he wasn't able to take back all this land. Well, Samuel, with just a humble prayer, enables the people by God's power to take back all the land. So they get all this land back, and now they have peace. So Samuel helped deliver Israel. Now what's very interesting is what happens after this event. And what's interesting is Israel's response to God and Samuel. So look at chapter 8, verse 1. It says, "And it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. Now the name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second Abiah, and they were judges in Beersheba. And his sons walked not in his ways, but turned aside after liquor, and took bribes, and perverted judgment. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together, and came to Samuel unto Ramah, and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations." So by this point, there's been some time that's gone past. Samuel is old. He has sons. But unfortunately, his sons are not walking in the same ways that Samuel was. They're going after the wrong things. And so what's interesting is that the children of Israel, they come up to Samuel and say, "We want you to make a new king. Because you're too old, getting too old, and because your sons aren't any good, we want you to provide a king to judge over us." Now, this is in essence what Israel is saying here is that, Samuel, you are the one that delivered us from our enemies. You, the human Samuel, you're the one that delivered us, so we need another human to take care of us. Now, is that the case? Had Samuel won all these victories, had human won this victory? No, it was ultimately God, right? How many of you watched the Super Bowl last week? Or I'm sure most of us remember this Super Bowl, right? The Broncos won. Seems like an eternity ago now, right? Well, let's say that Peyton Manning gets up there and he's making his speech and he's saying, "I want to thank this football because it won the victory for our team." I mean, yes, right? The football was involved, but you can't say that that is what won them the game, right? Well, in the same way, yes, Samuel was involved in this, but it was God who won all this. So first of all, Israel's off to the wrong start because they're thinking that it was Samuel that won the victory and not God. And then they also say that the reason we want a king is because all the other nations around us have kings, so we want one too. You ever had your kids ever say this? You know, all the other kids are doing it. All the other kids are wearing their clothes backwards. I don't think that is a thing, but you know, all the other kids are doing crazy stuff, so I want to do it too, right? That's what Israel's saying. All the other nations have kings. We want a king. Well, what does Samuel say to this? Look at verse 6. It says, "But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto the Lord." So key there in that verse, it says that this displeased Samuel. It means he was sad. Well, he was probably sad because, first of all, they weren't honoring God. But he's also sad because they're rejecting Samuel, saying that you're too old, your kids aren't good enough. So this is sad for Samuel. Well, he tells this to God, and what does God say? Look at verse 7. It says, "And the Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto thy voice of the people, and all that they say unto thee, for they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them, according to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them out of Egypt, even unto this day, wherewith they have forsaken me, and served other gods, so did they also unto thee. Now therefore hearken unto their voice, howbeit yet protest solemnly unto them, and show them the manner of the king that shall reign over them." So what happens here is God, instead of him just being offended, he consoles Samuel, saying, you know what? They're not rejecting you ultimately, they're rejecting me. Because what they're saying, God says, they're saying that God, I am not enough to rule over them, to take care of them. Well, think about it. Who is the one that has provided for Israel to this point over and over and over again? God. And what's crazy is, so sometimes, especially for us, when God keeps on providing things. A lot of times we can just kind of write it off as like, oh, I worked really hard. I tried really hard. But in the case of Israel, it was really clear every time that it was not a person that delivered them. It was God. I mean, how many times do they go up against these overwhelming odds and a natural event happens and wipes out the whole army? That's God. So it was very obvious it was God up to this point. But yet they're saying, no, it's been us taking care of ourselves. Kind of like if a baby was like, yeah, I've taken care of myself this whole time. I'm going to be able to take care of myself. I've got this. That's kind of what Israel is doing. And, that's pretty silly, but, we can have a tendency to do that, right? Because this really shows itself when the next trial comes up. When the next trial comes up and I freak out, you know what that's really saying is, well, I've done all these things in the past to get here, and this looks like it's too much. But when we look back, it's been God that's provided for us to get us over all these hurdles every time. So when this next hurdle comes up, I can have faith that God can help me overcome this one as well. Well, anyways, Israel's totally missing the point here about who's been taking care of them. And then God also points out to Samuel that this isn't anything new. The Israelites have been doing this to me over and over and over again. They keep on rejecting God, saying, oh, it's all that we did. It's kind of like if you ever had a dog that runs into the glass screen a lot. Keeps on running into the glass screen. It's painful, it's sad, but when it happens again, you're not surprised, right? The dog keeps on doing it. Well, that's what God's saying about Israel. He's like, I'm not surprised. This is what Israel has done generation after generation after generation to me. And so you would think that God at this point would be like, that's it, I'm done. After all I've done for you, and now you want a human king? But God doesn't do that. He's still loving, and he tells Samuel to try to reason with Israel. Try to tell Israel that a human king is not actually going to be that beneficial. Well, then Samuel tells them this. I'm not going to read 10 through 18 because of time, but in summary, what Samuel says is that this king that you want, this human king, he's going to take a portion of your children, a portion of your goods, and he's going to take them and use them primarily for himself. It's kind of like, let's say for some reason you had to pay taxes to a child, and they go and they spend all the money on, it's disappeared. They spent all their money on candy that was supposed to be used for you. You're like, you wasted all the money. He's saying that's what a human king's going to do for you, Israel. He's going to take most of your stuff, and most of it's going to be for himself. And yet Israel's like, you know what? I don't care. I want it anyways. It's kind of like if you tell someone, don't drink the poison, it's going to hurt you, and they drink it anyways. That's what Israel is going to do here. Because look what the children of Israel say to this. Verse 19 says, but the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, no, but there shall be a king over us, that we may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out and fight our battles. And when Samuel had heard the words of the people, he repeated them into the ears of the Lord, and said unto the Lord, and the Lord said unto Samuel, obey their voice and make them a king. Samuel then said, the men of Israel, go every man to his city. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, nay, but we will have a king over us, that we may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us, and go out before us and fight our battles. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. So Israel says, we don't care, we know it's not going to be the best, but we want it anyways. And I'm sure Samuel's very disappointed at this, but he tells this to God, and God says, the last verse we'll look at here is verse 22. It says, and the Lord said to Samuel, hearken unto their voices, and make them a king. And Samuel said unto the men of Israel, go ye every man unto his city. So it's very interesting here. Even after Israel gets warned, even after they say no, God says, okay, you have the free choice. I'm going to let you have a king. And so as long as Israel is a nation, God allows them to have a king. But here's a spoiler alert. It doesn't work out very well. Most of the kings just end up doing what he says here. They just serve themselves. They're selfish. They don't help the people. So even though they make this bad choice, God still loves them. So in conclusion, first of all, have you put your faith in Jesus to be your Savior? Because that's the first step before we get into these other things in application. So if you don't know for sure you're on your way to heaven and how to have a relationship with God, talk to me. I'd love to share more about that with you. Now when it comes to heroes of the faith, and with Samuel here, we see Samuel showing faith in that he knows he cannot accomplish these tasks and goes to God and asks God to do it. Because remember I said we're going to compare Samuel to Gideon and Samson? Because when it comes to hard things in our life, do you realize that oftentimes we fall into the category of either Samson or Gideon? Because Samson, you know what he does? He says that, you know what, if there's something hard in my life, I'm going to use all this, I'm going to put it all on my shoulders. I'm going to grunt and worry about it until I get it done. Kind of like if you ever picked up a large object before. You know, it's really having you're carrying around, you're grunting, and that's what we do sometimes with our problems, right? I'm going to put it all on my shoulders. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to do Samson. If Samson didn't get anybody else involved, he just did it himself. Well, what does that lead to when I try to do everything myself? Anger leads to worry, undue stress, stuff that God did not want us to deal with. He does not want us to have those negative emotions. So on one end, we can be like Samson, but God can help us be like Samuel in the sense of, I'm going to have faith, God, that you can do this through me and with me. I'm not going to just try to grunt and worry about this all on my own. But then we also have on the other end to be like Gideon. Now, Gideon, every time he saw, at least at the beginning, he saw something that he knew he couldn't do, what did he do? He didn't do it, right? He needed sign after sign after sign from God. And that could be another thing that we can do. When that problem comes into our life that we know we can't overcome, we can just hide from it. We can just try to avoid it. We try to act like it's not even there. But Samuel, when he saw that difficulty, he says, I know I can't do this, but I know that God can. So when we come up to that obstacle in life where it just doesn't seem like there's any way I can get over that on my own, God can give us the grace to know that He can empower us to overcome these obstacles in our life. Now, a lot of this comes down practically to prayer. You say, well, how do I do this on a daily basis to not put everything on my shoulders, yet not run away from the problems? Well, prayer is key, because we talked about in Sunday school that, first of all, prayer helps with centering my mind on truth. Truths like God loves me. Truth that God's in control. But then also, as we see in Samuel, when these problems came up that were too big for him, he would come before God and pray. And in our life, that doesn't mean that God won't help if we don't pray for it. But you know how amazing it is and how much faith it gives us when we ask God of these things and see Him provide? But then another key thing with prayer is acknowledging I cannot do this. But you can. That's why prayer is so key when coming up to these hard things in our life. That God, I can't do this, but you can. So we see that Samuel shows faith in that he is willing to go through these things for God, but to show faith by praying and asking God to do these things. And then we see how God is the hero of this story, as He is the one that allows us in His love to have free will. But then when we use that free will to bad ends, to do wrong things, He still loves and forgives. Because think about the children of Israel. Could God have made it so that they could not have had a kid? Could He have stopped it? absolutely. This goes all the way back to Adam and Eve, right? Could God have made Adam and Eve just like robots? Yeah, they had to obey God. They had to do these things. No, from the very beginning, he gave mankind free will. And that is a blessing. And that is a loving thing of God. But right from the beginning with Adam and Eve, we can use that free will to choose wrong things. So here's Israel wanting to use their free will to have a king that's not going to be good for them. God in his grace says, okay, I'm going to let you exercise your free will, but I'm warning you. And they say, we don't care. We're doing it anyways. But yet God loves them and is there for them through those bad choices. And the same goes for us. You have the privilege of free choice. That's a privilege. But the bad part is when we use that free choice to do wrong things or things that aren't best. Well, the good news is that even when we make those mistakes, God forgives us, he loves us, and he keeps on walking with us. Because you know one of the biggest temptations of the devil is discouragement. So when I fall down, when I mess up, the devil wants to be like, you are such a mess up. Why do you even try? You're just going to keep on falling into the same pit over and over and over again. You're never going to be good enough. Why even try? He wants to keep us down. You know what this tells us? God says, I know you've messed up, but I love you. I'm here for you. Just ask forgiveness, come back to me, and we'll keep on going. So we have a hero who loves and forgives even when we make the wrong choices. Let's pray. Father, we thank you that you do love us and forgive us and are there for us even when we make the bad choices. Just like you were there for Israel even after they made the wrong choice of going after a human king instead of you. And God, you're just so patient with us. And we keep on thinking that we've provided for ourselves and that we're going to continue to provide for ourselves. To think that you're not enough. To keep on choosing not the best option, and yet you continue to love us anyways. You continue to forgive us. You continue to give us mercy. You continue to give us grace. And you continue to walk with us. We just thank you for that. And God, we just pray that you would take the debilitating emotion of worry away from us. That we wouldn't, first of all, just try to put whatever hardships in our life, or even the smallest things in our life, just totally on our shoulders and just worry and just try to force things to happen. God, may we just take one step at a time, trusting you and relying on you, and not just trying to do this all on our own. Or help us I pray that you give us faith to be like Samuel in the sense of, even when we know that we can't do this, that you would help us not to run away from the problem or act like it's not there, but to come before you humbly and ask for your help, acknowledging we need your help, and also having faith that you can do this in our life. I pray that you would give us that kind of faith and courage to step out and do these hard things. God, we thank you for your love and for your power. In your name, amen.